Daniil Donk was born in the city of Tomsk, and this is one of the oldest cities in Russia, with it being founded in 1604. But the unfortunate thing about this city, if you want to be a competitive Counter-Strike player, is that it is over 5,000 kilometers away from the nearest Counter-Strike server. So this meant that from the beginning, Donk had to utilize a very different playstyle, especially considering that the best ping he could play on was over 100 milliseconds. As we can kind of see from his gameplay, he tends to utilize his movement in a way that almost no other player can. Donk's story begins in the most stereotypical fashion. His older brother introduced him to Counter-Strike 1.6 at the age of just 5. Donk didn't actually pick up Global Offensive until his older brother bought it later, but after swapping the old for the new, he spent a lot of time playing on FACEIT, which helped him develop his unique playstyle. According to Donk himself, he spends between 14 to 15 hours per day just playing Counter-Strike. That is also reflected pretty well in his hours, where he has accumulated over 14,000 hours at the age of just 17. Donk made his very first appearance on HLTV.org playing for Spirit Academy against Finest. In this game, he actually only played one of the 3 maps in this series, and even more surprisingly, he performed pretty average with a 0.91 HLTV rating for his single map played. However, this was just the beginning for Donk. For a while, the Russian youngster continued to play certain maps for Spirit Academy with middling results overall, but it seemed that this was just a bit of a testing period for the young prodigy. He eventually started to play more and more games with Spirit Academy and was improving at a rapid pace. Starting in 2021, he averaged just a 0.99 HLTV rating, but he was beginning to garner attention within the CIS scene. Regulars of CIS, FACEIT, and ESEA held his skill ceiling in high regard. His aim was already at an elite level, but his decision making is what set him apart from other prospects at the academy level. Once he found his footing within a team environment, it became obvious that Donk was the real deal. In 2022, his rating increased to a pretty respectable 1.14, and his confidence was slowly building with each passing series he played. He became more sure of himself in a structured environment, and his skills were beginning to translate. The following year, in 2023, his prodigal essence was no longer privy to those in the CIS region. On January 10th, the official FACEIT Twitter account made a highlight post showcasing Donk's incredible stats for the period. And these performances weren't just limited to FACEIT. Donk was absolutely destroying everyone in official games, where he averaged a 1.24 HLTV rating. In June of 2023, he earned the trust of the Spirit Brass and was officially brought into the main Spirit roster, and the Russian team now consisted of Donk, Zontix, Art Frost, and of course Jopper and Magix. This roster would immediately find success within just over a month by winning the CCT North Europe Series 6. From that point onward, Spirit's results fluctuated between placing high at events and sometimes simply bombing out of them. However, the one consistent factor was Donk's performances. While Donk was on Spirit Academy, he averaged a 1.17 rating overall. Very impressive, of course, but while on the main Team Spirit roster, Donk had found a whole new gear to his game and managed to average an incredibly high 1.38 HLTV rating. This becomes even more impressive when we consider the competition Donk has had to face. Coming off of a super hot 2023, 2024 started with the PGL Major Copenhagen Major RMR qualifiers. Luckily, Spirit managed to qualify for the RMR without too much trouble, and while doing so, Donk managed to post a 1.56 rating, the highest of the event. Then of course, we head into IEM Katowice 2024. The Spodek has played host to some of the most iconic and legacy-defining performances in Counter-Strike. And like many before him, Donk arrived to make his mark. Team Spirit started in the play-in stage, and it went perfectly for them. They didn't drop a single map, and the Russians were firing on all cylinders. Donk dropped a comfortable 1.64 rating during this stage. However, this was just the beginning, as when we headed into the main event, Team Spirit had quite the battle to fight if they were wanting to make the playoffs, starting with Nardis Fincer. Team Spirit seemed to handle their business, losing a map to the international squad, but otherwise looking comfortable. Heading into the second game, Spirit had zero issues handling the North American squad of Complexity, and were at this point guaranteed to make the playoffs. In a bid for a ticket to the semifinals, Spirit were up against a juggernaut in FaZe Clan, a team that had plenty of past successes against the Russian core of Spirit lineups. But this time, Spirit had an ace up their sleeve. Donk put up an all-time performance, dropping a 1.83 rating in the series, which culminated with a map 2 thrashing, where he went 27 for 9 with a 2.35 rating. In a 2-0 victory, Team Spirit placed themselves directly into the semi-finals of IEM Katowice, and everyone was watching. Folk heroes and one-hit wonders are created in a studio environment, but legends are cemented in front of a crowd. In Counter-Strike, the lights don't get much brighter than the Spodek. Where many have crumbled in the face of pressure, 17-year-old Donk had to prove he was built for greatness under the spotlight. The first test in the playoffs was Falcons, a squad who, at the time, was looking pretty impressive, especially considering the veteran experience of Snappy and Zonic. This was a true test of the old guard versus the rebellious up-and-comers looking for glory. However, Donk was more than ready to face the test. Team Spirit looked absolutely clinical in this matchup, and Donk was thriving. A clean 2-0 game with Donk dropping a 1.64 rating. Waiting in the grand finals was the second stage of their boss fight. It's one thing to beat Karrigan's FaZe in the still studio environment of a group stage, but doing so on one of the biggest stages in Counter-Strike is a tall task for any team. The stage was set. Would FaZe redeem themselves for their earlier capitulation against Spirit? Will Donk get his first taste of Tier 1 glory? The best of 5 will settle it, starting on a staple of FaZe Clan's map pool, Nuke. The game started strong for FaZe, and the map was looking highly competitive. Magix and Zontix were both looking shaken under the pressure of the grand finals so many dream of winning. However, Donk would not be denied. He played like a man possessed in the second half of play and pulled Team Spirit over the line for a map 1 victory, doing so with a 2.06 HLTV rating. Mirage was up next, and Karrigan's experience was shining through, grinding out rounds, ensuring a tight scoreline throughout the game. Donk looked somewhat muted in the second map in comparison to the first, but he still managed to top the server and the map with 24 frags. FaZe seemed to be somewhat adjusting to Donk's tendencies, but his calculated aggression was still creating problems for the Dane-led roster. Up next was Overpass. FaZe were on the ropes, back against the wall, and Spirit had one hand on the trophy already. Letting your foot off the gas pedal against a team like FaZe can be a death sentence. Donk pushed that pedal right through the floor.
Dispatches of him and look at Donk do it! That's disgusting! Revolting from Donk!
One of the most dominant CT sides of all time, Team Spirit win the first half 11-1, with Donk absolutely obliterating FaZe Clan. The rest of the game felt like a foregone conclusion, and Team Spirit took the third and final map of IEM Katowice 13-3, with Donk delivering a transcendent 2.38 HLTV rating in the final map of play. With the conclusion of IEM Katowice, Donk had matched the record for the highest big event rating with a 1.70 rating overall. He was of course crowned the MVP of the event and made perhaps the loudest introduction the pro Counter-Strike world has ever seen. After IEM Katowice, Team Spirit came back down to earth, but Donk remained firmly in the stratosphere. He still continues to post high ratings and frag movie-worthy highlights. Team Spirit are yet to win another big event, with formidable teams such as Mouse, FaZe, and even G2 all securing victories as of late. Team Spirit ended the season, however, on a bit of a high, and it's yet to be seen if Team Spirit can replicate the form they found in Katowice. One thing is for sure, all eyes will be on Donk whenever he connects to the server.